how do you want to do this? Is this like famous thing that everybody loves to do in one very particular instance of the game, but like spreading that out into just like, how does your character do that? Can clarify a lot of rules things and get people more immersed.
Welcome to DireDen. I'm Brad Wolf, and I have special guest Ryan Doyle from Verdigree's table with me today. Today we are talking about the roles of the Game Master, and specifically the teacher role today is what we're focusing on.
How does your character go about doing this thing? Okay, you rolled an 18, cool. What does that mean? You succeeded, what does that look like? And that starts to get people engaging more with the world than the rule set.
Yeah, so like as you role play, right, you're setting an example, you're teaching really how you would like them to role play.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're kind of setting the tone. And as a game master, you're role playing multiple different characters throughout the course of a session usually. And that gives you an opportunity to show different ways to, whether it's different voices or different, acting styles, right, depending on the NPC that you're playing. But also just coming back to one of your more recent videos that you were just talking about, the how do you want to do this, and applying that question to more than just when you kill the monster or when you get a critical hit, right? That how do you want to do this is a way. It's like a handoff, right?
Yes.
It's like you're role playing, and then they say what they want to do, and you ask them for that description, right? Then that gives them the opportunity, like you said, to meet you where you are.
You do what you do better and stronger, and then you get out of the way. You pass the ball, right? You're given. I made an NBA Jam joke because like you were passing and you're letting them jump, right? you are setting them up for success again and again and again and again.
Giving them that alley-oop.
Yep, exactly, exactly. And they will learn from each other, right? Like having that's one of the star pupil, right? To string the metaphor, dunking. The people sitting around the table are like, "Oh, that's cool. I want that." And that's the good stuff. Is now players are engaged in the other players' characters, and that's when it really starts cooking.
Right. Yeah. When you see that moment, when it clicks, right? That's really the reward of bringing new people in, right? Yes. And that moment when it clicks, going back to like learning the rules, it could be simply that, where a player's like, wait a second, if I use this spell in this situation, it's going to work because I know this rule, right? Whatever that rule is, whether it's the rule about like forced movement doesn't provoke an opportunity attack, right? But this spell isn't technically forced movement. So if I use this now, then they will get the opportunity attack. Like when they figure something like that out and those rules click, that can be really exciting for them. And it's energizing for everybody else at the table as well. But that same kind of thing can happen in the role play where you're like passing the ball and setting people up, making that assist, that alley-oop. And then when it clicks and that player sets up another player, right? Those are the moments where you're like, oh yes, they got it. They're into it now. And that I find is like one of the most exciting parts about playing the game, is when that like synergy, that teamwork, really starts to escalate, right?
Yeah, and there's levels to it. Like you see people, like you see players level up, right? Like it's very evident when the character levels up. But like, yeah, when the rule set clicks and they start doing clever things, that you're like, oh, wait, yeah, okay, cool. That's 2 hours of content in the trash because yeah, that works. Okay, it can be alarming sometimes in the moment, but it makes you proud.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing too. Like again, kind of extending this teacher metaphor. In order for students to succeed, right, as a teacher, you kind of have to give them space to succeed. You can't constantly be in instructor mode, right? And sometimes that means setting aside your pride. So that moment where something clicks for them and they figure out, like you said, that thing that's going to, bypass a whole chunk of content that I've got prepared. You have to set aside that pride and or maybe just shift gears, right? Instead of taking pride in this is the cool thing that I planned for tonight, that pride shifts to, wow, my players just figured out a really cool thing, and I want to support them in that cool moment.
You're constantly leveling up as a dungeon master too, and like I've been learning to do less. I've been learning to create more and more space. I used to be much more concerned about I got to keep the pacing up, I got to keep things moving, and I'm a little more comfortable if you step back at a certain point, like with more advanced players, let's say, not in the very beginning, but with more experienced players at the table, you stepping back creates a vacuum that they will fill. and now they start to come forward more. Even the audience member, the kid in the back of the class, is going to start doing more.
Yeah, it's almost like a strategic approach to things, right? Like if, like you were saying earlier, if you're constantly doing all the descriptions and you're constantly making all the like rulings, and you're the one, when they say I want to cast this spell, you're the one that's feeding them how the spell works. Like you're doing all the heavy lifting. There's not that space for them to take ownership as much. So creating that space, kind of like like a game of chess, where you occupy part of the board, so the opponent can only move in that other half of the board, right? So that same kind of thing, like you're creating space, kind of moving in and out of this interchange of how much do I control the rules, how much do I control the role play, and then how do I dial it back and give them that moment to shine, right?
Yeah, and it's a constant balancing act. I don't think there's like, this is why I always push back against like the one true way, because you got different people at your tables. Those people had a very different week last week than this week, right? your star pupil, your lead actor, maybe had a rough week, and he's like, I'm the kid in the back of the class this time, man. Like, give me my beer and my pretzels and some goblins to stomp, and like whatever you want to do, but like I got nothing for you this time around. But also, like I think front loading is very important with newer players, being way engaged, being willing to break out and explain why things are the way they are after they're hooked, explaining the rules a lot, maybe being very metagamey about stuff, so that later you can do less and less and less and less, so that whatever it goes out of bounds, the player knows, picks up the ball and keeps it rocking. You don't have to blow the whistle. It just keeps spinning. So you do more early on, so you can do less and less and less, and that keeps you immersed.
Yeah, that's a great point.